remember on the day of my high school graduation, Brett showed some pictures. I was from a very rural place, and I graduated with about 12 people. And in that small town, the people, everyone in the town of 250 would walk by and would shake your hand and say, "Congratulations. Congratulations. So proud of you. Congratulations." And my dad and my mom came through. And my dad held out his hand. And in it, he put a silver dollar from, that's not old to you, but it's old to us in America, from the 1800s. And he said, it was early 1900s, this old coin. He said to me, "My dad gave this to me on the day I graduated high school. And he said, I give it to you." He said, "Pass it on." That's something for me to guard and entrust, isn't it? Something for me to pass on, to entrust to another. Friends, the message that Paul had to Timothy was something so much more than a coin. This is what Jesus said. One would sell everything he has to go dig it up as a buried treasure in a field. One would give his whole life away to gain. This message, this gospel, it's a greater treasure than a coin. Its worth is inestimable. It's incalculable. Friends, words cannot describe the importance of this message. So Paul says to Timothy, entrust it. Entrust it. While the offer of the gospel is freely given, he says, don't just give this message to pass it on. Don't just entrust it to anyone. What's the text say? Give it to faithful. Give it to the faithful men and women there. Don't just pass this to anyone, though certainly in evangelism we want to make the gospel call broad. We want to pass it to all nations and all peoples. But Paul says here to Timothy, entrust this specifically to who? To those who are faithful, those who are trustworthy, those who are dependable. I wouldn't give something like my plane tickets this morning to my 3-year-old daughter if I wanted them to stay safe, would I? Well, how much more than this faith that's been once and for all passed down from the saints? You don't just entrust this to anyone, Timothy. Entrust this to faithful men. Why? Well, as my text says, so they'll be faithful to teach others also. Entrust it to those men and women who are faithful, who will not just hold on to it, who won't just put it in a safety deposit box, but who will pass it on, who will share it with others, who will teach others also. Why? Why would he pass it on? Why must he entrust it? Why to others who would teach others also? Why not just to everyone? Well, the third point, after the courage of the calling, the charge of the calling is the cost of the calling. Why just to faithful men? Well, there's going to be a cost. There's going to be a cost associated with this, Timothy, and it's this, verse 3, share in the sufferings as a good soldier of Jesus Christ. Timothy isn't in Rome. He's not locked in a dungeon. He's not chained up like Paul, but Paul says to him, Timothy, you still need to share in the sufferings. It's the same thing he said back in chapter 1, verse 8. Therefore, do not be ashamed of the testimony about our Lord, nor of me, his prisoner, but share in the sufferings for the gospel by the power of God. It's the only time this word is used in the New Testament is these two times. It means to suffer together. Paul says, if you're gonna suffer together, though, as with me. Timothy, share in these chains with me. To illustrate the cost of this calling, the difficulty of it, we're given 3 illustrations. You saw them as I read the text. The first is a soldier, the second is an athlete, and the third is a farmer. The soldier emphasizes the focus, the single-mindedness of the calling. There's a wholeheartedness in the devotion here. There's a self-discipline and intense devotion that's needed, Timothy, to be able to pass this on. You have to be single-minded in your focus, just like a soldier. The second illustration is that of an athlete. Josh knows that the athlete picture emphasizes competing according to the rules. Whatever sport you've in or seen or watched or entertained, you know that there's rules in that sport. You don't abide by those rules, you get a penalty. So it is with the Christian faith. There's rules that we must follow according to. If you like, the third illustration is that of a farmer. The farmer emphasizes the fact that this is hard work, friends. if you're going to do it, and if you're going to do it well, it's hard. It's tedious. It requires a certain tenaciousness, a hard work about it. The hard work and the fruit of the labor. The language here is strong. It means to work to the point of exhaustion, to the point where you've just worn yourself down. It's an illustration that demonstrates the industrious nature of the Christian walk, the fact that it's hard, that it's difficult. As Brett mentioned, I grew up on a ranch in north central Montana. I've learned many things from my father, but if I had to boil it down to one, it's this: hard work. No one worked like my dad, and my mom for that matter, but he inherited a ranch, a vast ranch that was thousands, incalculable amount of money in debt, and he worked his fingers to the bone on that ranch. So Paul says to Timothy, listen, Timothy, this is going to be hard. This is no cakewalk. This is no skate in the street. This is no easy thing. This is going to be difficult. He follows it up with his fourth exhortation: the consideration of the calling. Verse 7, he says, think over what I say, for the Lord will give you understanding in everything. The gravity of these illustrations and exhortations is stressed here. Paul says, think about it. These lofty commands, these high commands that he's given him in these terse illustrations of the athlete, the soldier, and the farmer, they require some pondering beyond the scope of this letter. You need to grasp this or comprehend this. You need to think about this some more. I don't know about in Poland or any of the places where you're from, but in America, in my generation, it seems like the attention spans are incredibly short. I'm concerned about my generation. Anything that's not visually stimulating, our attention spans are that of a goldfish. And Paul says here, don't be that way. He says you must think on it. You must meditate on this. You must give it thought. It is to say, Timothy, when you're done with this letter, don't be done with this thought. Think on it. And friends, I would commend it to you this day. When you're done with this sermon, don't be done with this thought. Think on it. The implications of this text for your life and your church are manifold if you're willing to think. The implications of this text and the blessings of this text are sweet if you're willing to think. The blessings, the joys of obeying this text are incalculable if you're willing to think.